Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here to review just one of the guys. This is to be another one of those kind of transformational films, as I've gone on to know a plethora of them. So I'm going to drop them down at some point in this review. But, anyways, one thing that I will say felt wrong about this movie is to have a bully character known as Greg in this movie. I'm sorry, when it comes down to a bully character, I can't find a guy named Greg as a threat or any kind of person that regardless of how big and hugely beefy and muscular he is, because of course he is. And I like what he does in this film with the whole like table thing and continuing to showcase how strong he is, which I think that idea was great. Uh yeah, like just his name alone. I was like, no. I'm sorry, the guy who is to play this this character, William. I just don't buy you through your name as a bullyish name of character. They really should have adjusted that. But anyways, so just one of the guys is to be a gender swapping attempt of movie, and I would go on to see so many of like this. Of course, there's the Amanda Bynes, like She's the Man movie, I think, or whatever that was called. There was to go on and be the Robin Williams Mrs. Doubtfire. There's to have been the movie that I'm sure a lot of people would probably have me want to review on this channel. Go out of your way on the comments to let me know that you want this review, because I'm sure it'll probably come up. There's a movie called Soul Man that has a guy swapping race via his makeup skin tone. And this whole movie is to go on and be about this guy who is to find out that colleges will be looking for certain kind of minority of people, and so he goes on through makeup to change his skin tone to then get a full ride into school. And let me know if you want me to review that, because I'm sure, from what I've heard, the movie has aged well, so maybe that'll be interesting. I don't know. I've never seen it. uh, but my real reason for me wanting to go on and review this specific film is because I'd watched a Steve Guttenberg movie that I really enjoyed called Don't Tell Her It's Me or Boyfriend School. There were strangely two titles with that film. And a guy goes on to come off from having cancer to then want to win over this girl and become this Lobo character, which for some reason she does not recognize who this guy is, and just wins the girl over. But then she finds out who he really is, and then is to run off to chase after him for how much she really does really love this guy. But anyways, so there is also to be stuff like the Can't Buy Me Love or Love Don't Cost a Thing movie, which was the remake of it. Patrick Dempsey is to be in desperation of no longer being the nerdy kid, so he pays off this popular girl to then in turn become popular himself, and then the ruse is to be uncovered and people find out what he did, and they go on and they ridicule and mock him for it. But by the end of the film, there's to be like, well, hey, wouldn't have anybody have gone on and tried to do this desperately, just so that way it could better their lives? Also, there is to be the John Cryer film where he's hiding either from the law or from somebody trying to kill him. So he goes into a gas station bathroom to dye his hair and shave his beard and mustache and go into a school to hide out. I don't exactly remember what the title of that movie is called, but I'm sure it'll be tagged in this film. But yeah, that is to be another film. John Cryer is in it. Other than that, I'm sure there's a good number of movies that are transformational. Let me know in the comments below what is be your favorite one, because I'm sure there's a lot of them. There's a shitload of them. So let me know in the comments below. So maybe at some point I will go on and go out of my way to probably review this in the future. So, what is this movie about now that I've spent about 5 minutes not really talking about it? So, Just One of the Guys is to be a movie about Terry. Terry is to have this dream of hers of being this reporter. So, she goes on through this class and is to hope that her report is to be good enough to get this summer job, and comes to find out that Rainmaker, her teacher, is to be like, yeah, your story isn't really good enough. Oddly enough, Terry just assumes that because of her gender, she doesn't get a good enough grade on this story to get this summer job, and so she decides to completely swap to another school and have a different gender identity to then in turn try and do the same thing over again in that other school, just to come to find out that she is just a shitty writer and that if anything her story is just not exciting enough. And so Terry is then left to just write with what she knows, which is to just be this experiment that she tried to pull off. And so while Terry is trying to pull off this experiment, she befriends a guy named Rick. Terry goes on to find Rick, and immediately Terry looks at this guy and she just thinks that there's just something about him. And then other people are to go on and just be like, you like him. And Terry's just like, no, like he's just a really good guy. It's like, no, there's just something about him that you just like, Terry. Just admit it that you like this guy. And Terry's like, well, no, like I'm with Kevin, Mr. Wonderful. Like, why would I not go on and why wouldn't I not ignore that? But eventually she will ignore that very frequently within this film, Kevin, and inevitably go on to realize that the reason why she's doing that is because she really does like Rick. And so Terry, the further along that she tries to hide her real gender identity, as if this is almost God, what is that called? The Hilary Swank movie, Boys Don't Cry. Is that it? Yes. Thank God I remembered that film. Yeah. Terry goes on to find girls like Sandy that are interested in Terry, and she has to figure out a way to try and kind of figuratively skirt around this girl. And so Terry goes on to take Rick, and this guy is to be probably more of the quiet side. He probably isn't to want to reveal much about himself. He's probably to keep himself very private. He evidently loves Rick James, or Rick Jackie Brown, a musician of some kind in this film. Eventually, it's to be talked about. James Brown. That's what I was trying to say. So yeah. So Terry goes on and starts to become Rick's wingman or wing lady, and so Rick goes on to change his clothes, and with a change of clothes becomes a change in personality, going on and sticking up against a guy named Greg who he's just had enough against. And that then in turn has Rick all of a sudden grow more of a confidence to then ask the girl that he has always ever liked out, because it seems that Rick in the back of his mind has had this fantasy about Deborah, and so he seeks it out because he's like, you know what, it's been a crazy day. Like, how about you and I go to the prom together? And Deborah says, yes. Yes, Deborah? Really? Anyways, so I guess it was just too good to not ignore. So this whole thing is eventually pushing to the prom. Because, of course, it's a high school movie. So, by the prom, we, of course, have Terry that is pushed to need to confess who she really is to Rick, the guy that she likes the most, more so than just friends. So, it gets revealed through Kevin who Terry is. And so then Terry grabs Rick, tells him the absolute truth, flashes him her chest, and we can enjoy her for all of her glory of visual here. And I honestly think within this movie, Rick is to just be just so enamored by just the flashing that that Terry gave him, but then also just being so, she revealed to him who she really was. Terry was to go on and kiss him, and so like, even though Rick felt that he was lied to, yeah, we have to bring that up, but still, like, Rick was to just go on and just be like, if I don't go on and if I don't make my way to Terry and and see if we can work things out, like, I am going to be haunted by the visual of her flashing me for the rest of my life, to just be like, God dang, that woman had some deliciousness all up and down, if you know what I'm saying. So, also, when it came down to Terry and Sandy drinking those beers by the fireplace, and Sandy, it seemed, wanted something from Terry. Obviously, like, she was going down to pull out a sock. Why didn't Terry go on and give Sandy the consolation prize of a courtesy fingering? Like, wouldn't that have gone on and been a gentlemanly gesture? Because at least Sandy would have gotten something that night. Not the probably something that she probably would have wanted, but in tandem, it would have been something, right? It would have been a consolation prize. It would have been something. Either that, or you maybe could have gone on and had some tongue action. Either way, there would have been something there as a courtesy to Terry, but it is what it is with this film. Also, I like the fact that we have just these patterns of, we have these things of beer that just says beer on them. At this point, I've gone on to see that in so many of these certain movies at this point, and it just is so weird and off-putting. But then again, like, I would go on to the Emilio Estevez grocery store scene in Repo Man, where we have an entire store that just blandly just says what everything is in the background, and I just find that hilarious. Like, I am just to be so interested in why they make that choice of not having a obviously branded thing at some points, because if anything, there's to be the cans that just say beer, but then there's also a Coca-Cola can that is to be slammed with these. So I'm like, what? I'm gonna be just so confused of why those choices were made. Plus, also, I'm very curious if this beer can thing that just says beer on it actually does exist, or if that is just a thing that they just keep putting in these movies so that way they wouldn't have to go on and have to pay somebody some kind of fee of some kind. I'm very curious about that. I want to know. Hopefully somebody in this movie or somebody that knows about films can tell me that secret. I'm curious about it. I'm just haunted by the fact that I don't get that answer anywhere. I'm just so fascinated by it. Anyways, so just one of the guys grading wise, just so finally I get to this. This movie is freaking epic. I absolutely love this film. It's available for free right now on YouTube and Tubi. Currently, at the second of this recording, it won't be forever. So, if you've never seen it, if you have seen it, but it's been a long time ago, recheck this thing out. It's so enjoyable. I think it still holds up. It still um, is to be a fun watch. I also like that there's to be a large number of background of in a boy's room, just a bunch of naked women, and and I'm just like, yeah, like why not? So because we have Terry that comes into Buddy's room and is just say like, God, does everybody just does every guy just want sex? And it's like, dude, you have a guy wall to wall with Playboy centerfolds all over his room, and that's what you're gonna lead with? Like, head scratcher for that one. But if anyways, like we have to realize that this movie is a comedy, so they're doing all of this on purpose. Everything is to be a gag. It's to be a joke. If anything, at some aspects of this movie, I think the only thing of these performances, they are kind of wooden at some points, where it feels like they're doing like play acting than normal acting. Because it just feels like some of this line delivery is to probably be something they've probably had to say over and over and over again. So probably for whatever take, it is to probably just be something um, that is to just be the reason why it sounds that way. Um, I would go on and say that there is some really fun things in this movie, like when Buddy would consistently be picking up the phone and being very rude to somebody, and then Buddy goes on to say to Terry, it's like, "Oh, mom says hi," or we have a line where Buddy goes on to say, "It's like, well, yeah, I've been having a lot of sex, but I finally want it with an actual partner." That is what I absolutely love about this film. Just like goofy lines like this, where uh like it is to really just be just something that you can have a lot of fun with here. Uh Plus also like there is the buddy scene where he's talking to Terry about like, hey, are you really gonna go on and play with the girl's emotions like that? And it's like, well, yeah, like I can kind of see where like, hey, you don't want to trick somebody, uh, and eventually like lie to them or keep a secret so much so that uh, would go on and just completely hurt the relationship. Like eventually when Rick finds out that Terry is actually a girl, and it hurts the relationship, but also again, Rick is just haunted by the Flash that he probably should have never seen, because if anything he couldn't unsee it, it's burned into his mind, and so he's just now wanting to go on and just seeking out Terry because he's just like, I that was just like I just couldn't just not just I just couldn't just like I had you're the one that got away, cause man. Anyways, so with that said, I think it's about that time to break this movie down scene for scene, blow for blow, because I think it's about that time to say, let's go out of our way to, final thoughts. If I haven't said already, like, it was really cool, like, we brought in, like, the muscular Greg character that goes on, like, lifts the kids and lifts the tables and goes on to, like, throw, Terry, and like they talk about like the puss word quite often in this film, and like that was actually pretty funny to just kind of play off of the fact that she's a girl, and then they're calling her that, or calling Terry that. But anyways, so with that said, um, yeah, this movie's epic, enjoyable. Check this movie out if you haven't already. Some people may go on and have their feelings about this film. I don't care. I could just say that I enjoyed it and liked it, whatever. Some people may hate this film. Some people may absolutely think that it's top 10 film or whatever. Either way, I think it's about that time to say, let's get into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time to spoil this movie. Let me know in the comments below what's be your favorite transformational film if I haven't said that already, because at some point I may go on and review it in the future. Hopefully I'll go on and find more classic films like this than that we can enjoy and whatever have you. As far as future reviews is to be concerned, I still wanted to get to Sinners, and I hope I will get to that, even though I'm sure no one will care about that review because no one really cared about The Mummy. But I'm going to probably end up doing the Sinners anyways, because in the back of my mind, bizarrely, I think that there's a reason to do that movie, but I did this movie instead. I was hoping to probably squeak in Sinners after this, but I doubt it because for how long these videos usually take. So, to do and put together and what have you. But anyways, with that said, and plus that movie is also like 2 hours long. I don't think I'll be able to squeak that out today. And review it and blah blah blah. Yeah, it probably won't happen. So, with that said, let's go on and say that it's about that time to get into the breakdown and spoilers, what have you, because it is about that time. So, the very beginning of this film has, and I like that the very beginning of this, we're really pushing how seductive Terry is, like just by the pan shot of her basically not holding on into any bed sheets, and she's just sleeping on her bed, and she's basically wearing as skimpy as clothes as possible. That's great. And then we kind of see her in a bathing suit, bikini, and what have you. Like, we're seeing that that Terry is just very sexualized in the beginning of this, but also showing her femininity. And then eventually, when we see her in all these kind of coats and like 12 layers of that's the thing that I never understood about these films, like how they layer people to death. I'm like, aren't you hot in any of that? Like, I'm just like, god dang, like, I'm sure that these people were sweating like nobody's brother. But yeah, like, they just layer people to death in a film, and it doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, there's a lot of times where I guess for this specific character, they layer Terry up so that way to hide her body, but still, like, there's a load of layers on Terry. It just doesn't make any sense. So, anyways, so Terry gets up at 6:30 and is to have breakfast with her brother, runs down to get picked up by Kevin, and they hug and they make their way to school. So Terry goes on and meets with her best friend Denise, and Denise is starting to talk about her going to prom, but she can't decide about what boy that she's going with because I guess none of them are attractive enough to her. I'm sorry, Denise. Be effing happy that there's 3 guys just jockeying position for you. But I get it that maybe to you, none of them are Fabio looking, right? Or the man of your dreams. And maybe you're just settling. But still, like, you have 3 guys coming for you at the same time? Man, if only anybody could be that lucky. Well, like, I'm sure somebody out there somewhere is like, dude, I had that every day. Like, frickin' thrusting them away with a stick. Like, I'm sure that's the way that you probably live, whoever you viewer are, right? No? Well, that sucks. I know what it's like. So Denise goes on and is to say her plight to her friend. And so then we have Terry that's like, well, who's the better looking one? Who has a car? Like, who has like, basically going on and just looking at this person via like, well, like, what is the best benefit of them, not if they're a good person, which is kind of a shit thing to do. But I guess whatever for this film. Like, I guess maybe this could be like through a possible female perspective is something that we could probably get. But if anything, yeah, just like, I don't know. I guess it's really just to be a thing that it's like, well, I guess this is just the way to write this film. So Mr. Raymaker comes in and goes on to mention about how he is to say that anybody who's going to be a part of the contest to hand out their or competition to submit their reports so that way he can go on and and do them and be able to say who the winner is. So for the summer internship. So he goes on and also he mentions what his lunch is and how it's not really exciting. So we all of a sudden have this guy that makes his way to Denise, and even he goes on and asks Denise, like, well, hey, are you busy Saturday? We'll just continue throughout this movie to have guys in the background that are asking out either Denise or Terry. Like, there's these two guys that just keep walking behind her, both Terry and Denise in these films, and they just keep going on and they just keep asking them out. It's the same two guys that we keep seeing. So the guy who was to have gone on and asked out Denise all of a sudden gets a guy running to him and whispering sweet nothings to him. So this student goes on and makes his way to Mr. Raymaker and explains about how the driver's ed teacher had run over some dog and wants Raymaker to tell him whether or not he should bring a camera to record that, and Raymaker says no. So we cut to this lunch scene, and so as these two guys pass, they say hello to Terry as they walk by, and Denise is like, well, am I invisible? So Buddy sits down and starts giving Denise attention, and Denise wants nothing of it. She goes on to basically say how if the two of them were the last man and woman on Earth, she still would not go on and do anything with Buddy. For how really she probably just knows how just much of a sex drive that this guy is, and not much of anything else, sadly enough. But anyways, so sorry, I hate to say that, buddy, but it's true. So because that's kind of all that he talks about. There's nothing else but his woes and what have you. But yeah, 90% of the time, just all about just sex, but also at some points kind of helping Terry, but still just all about the sex. Anyways, so, and maybe Kevin a little bit, he talks about that. Anyways, uh, so here's the point I'm trying to get to. So Buddy is going on and is speaking to Terry and saying how since they have their house all to themselves, that Buddy wants Terry to invite all of her friends, tall, loose, whatever, and what have you, to come to their house so he can basically bang all of them. And And Terry's like, yeah, no. So they reject the whole party idea. And uh, so we go on and we have Terry that is talking about her article. And let me pause here for a second. Sorry, I had a hard time trying to transition here. So Terry goes on and speaks to Bucky and says how like horny he is and how uh, all he thinks about is just having sex with people, and Buddy is going on and looking at women and looking them up and down, and objectifying them, and whatever. So Terry and Denise leave, and so Terry's going on and on about this future summer job that she so wants. It's meant everything to her, and so Terry and Denise make their way to the Pearl High uh, winners for the Sun Tribune, and Terry goes on to find out that she's not one of the winners, and that the two who won were both guys. So immediately, of course, because gender, Terry is to go on and just assume that that is to be the reason why she did not go on and why she didn't win this whole thing here. And let me pause here again because this thing has a problem loading. So Terry makes her way to her Mr. Raymaker's office and starts to thumb through the submissions to see what grading that everyone got. And Terry goes on and overhears from Raymaker and some other teacher that they're talking about how one girl they want to flunk so that way they can keep her in school just because of the way that she dresses. And Raymaker goes on and says, like, hey, you can't go on and say stuff like that. You could get fired for things like that. And the teacher's like, well, so he walks off. Raymaker then goes and realizes, like, oh, Terry's here. Like, oh shit. So Terry starts to speak to Raymaker here, and so Raymaker tells Terry straight up, it's like, well, yeah, your story is just not interesting enough. And that if anything, putting your article that you put into this contest, it's not to go on and and be the same um as if you would go on and just kind of put a regular report out. So so Raymaker goes on and says to Terry, it's like, well, maybe you're not fit to be a reporter. Maybe you can go on and become a model or be something else. And Terry's kind of offended by that. It's like, well, I can't become a reporter. Like, I have to go on and I have to do a thing that would much more better suit, I guess, my gender. But even that, like, modeling, like, there's male and female models, but still, like, I guess it's like, oh, just like, why is it that Terry cannot become a reporter? I don't know. It just, anyways. So after Terry is to be upset that Rainmaker just is basically telling her that she doesn't have it to be a reporter, and she wants to prove him wrong. Buddy is to now be making his way through his room with all these Playboys, and eventually going to go on and put all these posters up through his room, and find that Kevin is to be making his way to the house, calling him Mr. Wonderful. Buddy will. So Buddy goes on and opens the door to Kevin to explain where Terry is by the pool. So Kevin makes his way in and splooshes into the pool. So Kevin, of course, wants to go on and wants to be intimate with Terry, but she's really not in the mood right now. She's to go on and be just so upset by what her teacher had told her, plus also that she had lost the ability to go on and do this summer job, and she's just so upset. Like, we obviously can tell that through a number of times of which that she has brought it up, that she has gone on to mention about how this is her dream, and that when she's not getting it, how crushed she is. So, and Kevin is just trying to go on and getting into her bathing suit and trying to get her unknotted, and Terry's like, no, like, so the more that Terry is talking about how her dream job is seemingly not going to work out, Kevin also goes on and says, like, well, hey, I've always dreamed about being a firefighter, and I would go on and I would practice doing all these fake fires, and Terry would go on to say to Kevin, it's like, well, then what stopped you from becoming a firefighter? And Kevin's like, do you know how much they get paid? It's like, of course. Like, the stupid like that would go on and force you not to become a firefighter or firefighter. So, so the more that Terry talks to Kevin, and the more that he's pushing just to have sex with her, and Terry's like, you know what, I'm really not in the mood, and and Kevin is like, well, can't you be in the mood, or can't you not be in a mood when your parents aren't not at home? So yeah, like, so Kevin is going on and really upsetting Terry, and not really listening to her. And so Terry goes on to leave and starts to talk to Buddy about how it's like, well, do all men just care about sex? And Buddy's like, well, hey, I'm a guy, I kind of resent that. So as his huge amount of entire room is to be covered with Playboy centerfolds, makes a lot of sense. So, but I think it's funny how when the two of them are talking here, how Buddy will go on and mention about how these centerfolds, like, he's known things all about them, where it's like, well, hey, this girl hates toxic waste, and this girl is trying to save the rainforest, or da 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 da. Like, he's throwing all these weird things of facts about all these women that he really does care about them, and he reads the articles of the Playboy. Good for him. So, uh, and how Buddy mentions that all these women all over his wall have his deepest respect. So, and it's not just about that they are flaunting their nudity for Buddy to see. So, so, so Terry goes on and asks Buddy if there's anything more profound than getting laid, and Buddy's like, "Well, yeah, getting a blowjob," and so, uh, so here's where Terry comes up with a cockamamie scheme. That if only she would have been a guy, that things would have changed. And Buddy's like, hey, you don't want to be a guy because all you do is go on and think of sex all the time. It's a living hell. You wouldn't want that. So Terry goes on and has the idea that she's going to go on and go to another school and put in the same article at a different school to then go on and be entered into this summer job through this other school that'll work out that way. And Buddy doesn't pay his sister any attention but just to be concerned about if one of the posters would be straight or not. So, because Buddy doesn't think that Terry can pull this off. So, Buddy goes on to make his way to a door and opens it. All of a sudden, there's to be a person standing there asking for Terry. But he goes on and calls out for his sister, to come to find out that the person actually at the door is Terry herself, dressed with Buddy's clothing to disguise herself. And so right after that, Terry is like, see, if I can go on and if I can fool my own brother, then I can probably go on and fool everybody into thinking that I'm a boy. So so here's where the Tootsie reference comes in, and I don't think I mentioned this within the other past review things, and I'll bring that up now. Yeah, the Dustin Hoffman movie with Bill Murray in it, Tootsie. I think I've seen bits and pieces of that movie, but I've never fully committed to watching it. I'm sure that'll be another thing that'll probably have to throw in here as a tag. Uh, yeah, like I think Dustin Hoffman goes on and tries to be a reporter or something like that, and so he swaps genders so that way he can go on and and do this job because otherwise he just I think it's a whole thing about him going broke or something. So yeah, Tootsie I think is a decent film, but I never went out of my way to fully commit to watching it. Like I think there's one scene where I saw with Dustin Hoffman and Bill Murray, and that's about it. Like that's all I know. Um, but yeah, but it's nice that there's a reference of this here. So so Terry is trying to figure out how to seemingly pull off to be more manly, and so Terry's looking at herself in the mirror and trying to see like how she could stand or how she could try to go on and try to disguise herself better. But he comes in and is to say it's like, well, you're not standing right. If anything, you need to like spread your legs a little bit more. You need to go on. You need to adjust yourself, and it's all about the way you walk and da da da. So Terry is it be like adjust myself like I don't have balls, and so what she does do is she grabs this sock and put it in her pants, but he's like, God damn, maybe I should try that. So yeah, so Terry goes on and does what Buddy says, and so shortly thereafter that, uh, we have Terry that commits into this outfit and the cutting of her hair so that way she could pull off looking like a guy, looking like a dude, even though if either way, um, Terry's just a motherfucking appealing person, regardless of what gender she's supposedly hiding out to be. It's like, God dang, Terry, delish. And I think at this point, no one's probably gonna really care about this review, so I could just go on and just say whatever I want at this point. But still, uh, yeah, I'm just being honest. So Terry goes on and makes her way into the school, and we of course have Greg. Greg goes on to mention about how if you can't lift weights, then you can just find some random freshman and then lift him up, and then you'll get a workout in. So Billy goes on to find some random freshman, grabs him from behind as if he's getting a wedgie almost, but he like pulls him from his pants and just starts lifting him up. Um, it looks like he's working on his shoulders, because yeah, like the way he's kind of lifting, yeah, that's just working here. So like that was kind of a stupid workout. But maybe works his arms and whatever, but it really just works his shoulder. So that's really a stupid workout, anyways. So after Greg goes on and drops the kid, we all of a sudden start to see that Terry is laughing, and Greg takes note of that. So Greg goes on and asks Terry who invited you, and Terry says, "Well, I'm new here." It's like, "Well, nobody wants another pussy." So Terry goes on and like, "Well, yeah, well, you're as smart as an ox and as smart as one," basically saying that he's dumb as fuck. So Greg goes on and like, "Oh, great! Like, I can go on and I can try another exercise." And he goes on to again uh, call it like the pussy toss. So I probably shouldn't be cussing this much because I'm sure it'll affect the video. I don't really care. Like, if anything, this video may do really well or it may do donut holes. I have no idea. Hopefully it does great, because I'm hoping that something will do really well. It seems like the Rambo reviews are doing more than I could hope that they could do as well. But if anything, yeah, a lot of these videos, some do well and then some of them just exist. Some get donut holes of no views, and that's great. Because at least I'll have gone on and done content. At least no one can say that I'm not trying. At least. So, so Billy goes on, or Billy, Greg goes on to chuck Terry, and that's where Terry goes on to meet Rick. Rick goes on to say to Terry, it's like, "Oh, I guess you've met Greg." So Rick goes on and lifts Terry up, and then they make their way to school. We go on to have these two nerdy kids that go on and talk about Star Trek a lot, and we even have one that I think even has like their own secret language of like beep bleep and bleep, whatever, like as if he's Beaker from the Muppets. So, I'm not sure which of the names of these nerdy kids because at some point I kind of gave up on the cast list. The nerdy kids go on and they talk about how they gave up on their homework and they just became animals and couldn't have been bothered to have finished their homework. To her, in turn, the teacher is like, "Well, hey, if I don't get that assignment, like, you're gonna be in trouble." And so the two nerds kind of turn to one another and is like, like. So, uh, so Terry goes on and asks if she can go to the bathroom, and so now she needs to make her way to decide either boys or girls key is what she's going to be taking, and of course Terry takes the boys key. So Terry makes her way to the bathroom, and just the way that it looks with all the graffiti and who knows what else, I'm sure Terry is to be reserved and not really wanting to go to the bathroom here. But when a guy comes in that was to be one of the guys partnered up with Greg from before, he comes in the bathroom. Uh, Terry just runs through a urinal and is to pretend that she had just peed and is going to leave. Uh, Terry goes on to wash her hands and I guess is pretending this guy is paying her any attention. Terry goes on and just starts smacking the soap dispenser as if that weirdly has to be a thing that guys just do. I don't know, like, I guess, like, I guess that, yeah, there's sometimes where, like, guys do go on and try to just have, like, a little bit of random fun with something or just think that people see that as, like, a manly thing or just something you could just do as a joke. Um, so I think that the soap smacking thing could probably be a thing here. Like there was a lot of times where I would go on and I would take like a a top of some wall or something and I would like smack it just because like I could of course touch it because I was a really tall guy. So I would do that a lot. There'd be a lot of times where I'd go on and I'd be obviously making my way through a door and I'd just smack the top of the door because I was tall enough to touch it obviously. Um, because it was just fun for me. So I guess that is probably what this is to be matching up here. That people just kind of like to smack things and just have some enjoyment of that. Anyways, so Terry heads out of the bathroom just to realize that she does have to go. I apologize at any point if I'm saying he or she here when some people are like, well, hey, uh, it's a girl who's dressed as a guy. Like, you should be saying this. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm just trying to figure out ways to talk about this film. And at some points, I'm having issue exactly figuring out if I should just call Terry a she when she is, of course, in a man's outfit. Like I would still go on and try to as much as possible call her Terry, but if anything, I just tend to just get very confused, and that's why I do that. I do that with uh, in Power Rangers. If you watch enough of those reviews of Mighty Morphin, I don't know what to call Alpha 5 either. I keep calling it a like I say it's like well Alpha 5 because I don't know like boy or girl, even though they have said that Alpha 5 is a boy, but on the show. I just get very confused quite easily. So, I'm not doing it to offend anybody. I just don't even know what the proper thing is to say. So, Terry goes on and makes her way back through the bathroom door to find the guy making his way out. So, if anything, Terry just looks stupid here. So, Terry makes her way to the cafeteria, and here's where we find that Greg is going on and doing the whole workout thing where he grabs this table, hoists it up to where all the food spills, and he then goes on to grab the uh the uh I want to say the thing that they're all sitting on and he lifts that up also and they slide all down. So Terry goes on and looks at her schedule and notices how in late in the day the journalism class is. So also that Terry will soon have to make her way to PE with a teacher called Morrison or Coach Morrison. So Terry makes her way into the boys' locker room and we get a guy named Reptile that I think is sneezing. I like Reptile. He's kind of fun. He has all these snakes and lizards and all these kind of things just everywhere in this movie, and it's kind of funny. But I'm sure probably in high school there probably is that guy probably somewhere, right? that just kind of brings in these just kind of odd items all the time, just because he's a peculiar guy. Let's say that. Like, I would go on and find my way onto the nerdy side of high school. It wasn't. I probably would be a very mid. Like, everybody knew me because I was really tall, but if anything, I was kind of more making friends with a lot more nerdy people than I would. Like, I would go on and probably befriend jocks too, but like, I think that was just because I tried doing sports in the beginning of high school. Uh, but I think my circles were mostly with the nerdy crowd, is where I ended up. So, so we make our way into Terry going into this locker room to get smacked with this jockstrap, like we see here. And so Terry goes on and makes it to this coach that has a affinity for, or really is to enjoy golfing, uh, bowling, and he has all these analogies about bowling at some random points in this film because he really just likes bowling. It's strange. So, uh, Terry goes on and speaks to the coach and mentions about how she doesn't have a uniform because she just transitioned in, and maybe that'll go on and just force her to go to a study hall instead of going on and doing the gym class. Coach goes on and says, "Oh, no! Like, I have all of my students. They will go on and be involved in the class. So if anything, you're not getting out of this." So the coach goes on and hands Terry this outfit and forces her on her way. The coach also goes on and gives her a jockstrap, which is gross. Why would you go on and why would you give somebody a probably used jockstrap? That's disgusting. Uh, Plus, also, the coach goes on and says that it'll have a jockstrap inspection, which that is freaking weird. Uh, yeah, like, I'm sorry, like, when I was going to PE, uh, the only sport that I ever wore a jockstrap in was football or baseball, and even baseball, that was kind of a rarity that I wore jockstrap there. But I did get hit in the balls once with a with a baseball, and yeah, it fucking hurt. Um, but that was my mistake. It's like, yeah, you should have wore your strap that day. Yeah, I didn't think about it because I didn't think the ball was gonna bounce and hit me in the balls. I didn't think about it. Plus, that probably says a lot about my dick, about how the size of it is. Why go into this? I don't. I guess maybe I just don't care. Maybe it's funny. Maybe it's a funny anecdote. I got hit in the balls or hit in the dick. Isn't that funny? Everybody laughs. Anyways, I guess that'll um, that'll be a thing because I've gone on and I've hit um, people in the in the because I've hit girls accidentally down there. Doing certain sports things in gym classes. I didn't mean to do it, but it just happens. And yeah, nailed them right in the gooch. Um, didn't mean to do it, but it's happened more than once. And I didn't do it on purpose, but it just seems that there's a pattern of that, strangely enough. But anyways, so so Terry gets into the locker room and she needs to figure out how she can get around, obviously putting on a uniform without anybody noticing that she's a woman. So Terry makes her way to a locker to find that this guy is to be talking about how this rash is spreading on his down belows, probably because he's to have gone on and borrowed a jockstrap from somebody. That's probably why he has it. So all of a sudden, we have a number of guys and Greg leading the charge, saying that they're going to grab this new guy and do something horrible to him, haze him or tease him or whatever. we just see him being grabbed and being ran off, uh, and Terry is to be in absolute terror, thinking that she's going to be this person, but no, it ends up being some other person that is to be grabbed and uh, kind of hoisted above everyone to be dragged off and hazed. So Terry goes on and is to think that she will go on and change her clothes into a bathroom stall, but then she goes on to decide to put this piece of toilet paper and light it and then just start a fire. So everybody evacuates the locker room and then Terry can dress in secret. The coach goes on to mention how upset he is about whoever was to have gone on and set off this fire. And now whoever it was a human gutter ball and this and that and all these horrible things he could say. A zero and da da da. And then all of a sudden the coach realizes that Reptile is to have a lizard on his arm to where it's like, hey, no no reptiles, no nothing of any kind. So Reptile is then forced to go on and take this lizard and put him off to the side. So the coach goes on to want the guys to, or everybody, because let's incorporate Terry here. Oddly enough, I don't know why that this entire class is just dudes. You would think it would have been unisex, but I guess not. So the coach goes on and is to play a game of shirts and skins, and at some point, Terry is to end up being skins. Like, okay, take your shirt off. Come on, let's go. Terry falls onto the ground and she mentions about how she ate at the cafeteria and how she feels sick. The coach is hoping that Terry will get back up and just tough it out, but because he goes on and he mentions about a 7-10 split, and Terry goes on and says, because he asks her, it's like, well, what do you do if you're gonna get a 7-10 split? She's like, go to the hospital or go to the nurse's office, and he's like, no, like you try your best to go for the 7 and let it rip and whatever. So the more that Terry writhes in pain, the more that the coach is like, oh, okay, go to the nurse and lets her go. So now Terry makes her way to her journalist teacher to try to enter into this Sun Tribune contest. So this journalist teacher tells Terry that her report is very boring. Obviously, yeah, like I think her report was something about like cafeteria food or something like that. It wasn't exciting enough. So the journalist teacher goes on and tells Terry that she has a week to be able to resubmit this report to come up with a better story. And Terry is just like, yeah, I don't think I could be able to go on and like pretend to be this person for a week. But if anything, so Terry makes her way to Bud and Denise. And so now she's just gone on to realize no matter what her gender is, that she is just not good at being a reporter. And and so Terry is obviously upset here. Uh So Terry is to go on and say it wasn't about her gender. The Rainmaker was to just be right about her article. And Buddy goes on a way, yeah, because she mentions about how confused she is, and Buddy's like, well, yeah, of course you're confused. You're wearing my underwear. So Denise says, like, hey, give up on this thing, come back to Pearl, and like, if anything, yeah, you may have gotten a bad haircut, but at least you have a good life and a fabulous boyfriend. So uh so here's where Terry has the idea of, like, her experience being in the boys' locker room, her going on and being living the life of a boy could actually be an interesting story, and maybe this should be the thing that she should go on and try to use as this article. And Buddy goes on to say, it's like, well, yeah, I can immediately think of the headlines, or the headline, girl gets in locker room, turns stupid. So Denise is to go on like, oh man, like, you went in the boys' locker room. Could I go on and uh, could I be your brother or something like? Uh, so Terry is to say that Kevin will never find out about what she's been doing. If anything, Kevin will have suspicions the more and more he gets ignored by her. And so Buddy is to go on and say that there could be a possibility that he could tell Kevin, and that if anything, maybe if Denise goes on and is to eventually date him, or he's to probably get something out of it, and of course Denise will not go on and give in to something like that, then Buddy, of course, is just forced to, like, well, like, I tried. So so Terry goes on and is at her locker room the following day, and she overhears Deborah talking about how she's having trouble figuring out what to do with her earring because she had lost a piece of the earring, and she's like, well, what do I do now? Do I go on and do I just wear one earring for the rest of the day? And Terry brings up a helpful tip of, like, well, hey, if you just use a piece of your eraser, you can go on and have that to be the back of it, and you can just kind of have that to be a thing for the rest of the day until you find um, where that back of that earring is. So Terry just starts to walk off, and Deborah's like, huh? And then Terry's like, oh, well, I have a lot of sisters. And Deborah's like, oh, well, yeah, like, I guess that, uh, like, you may have just kind of overheard that. So, now we cut to Terry, and she's figuring out who she can make friends with. And she goes on and she sits next to Reptile. Reptile goes on and is to have a rat that says is going to be fed, and Terry's like, "Oh, you're gonna feed this rat?" And Reptile's like, "No, the rat is going to be fed to this snake." And then so Reptile starts pulling the snake out. Terry, of course, disgusted by that, walks away and then makes her way to Rick. So Terry goes on looks at Rick like, "Oh, you like music?" So the two of them have to kind of reunite with one another and say who their names are, as they don't really know who they are. So it seems that at some point Rick was to be the newer guy, as he's been in the school for 2 months now. So Rick has been known, I guess, to have transferred all over the place, and so he's been a professional at being a new kid in school. So, uh, so Greg and Deborah make their way into the cafeteria, and Deborah thanks Terry for the tip because it actually did work. Greg turns to Deborah. It's like, why are you being so nice to that guy? And Deborah is like, well, he helped me with my earring. And Greg is like, well, that's because he's a tulip. The whole time, Greg will go on and keep calling Terry a tulip for some odd reason, because I guess that's a goofy nickname. Uh, so Rick is in awe that a new guy like Terry is to quickly befriend Deborah, and is in awe that Terry had figured a way. Like, she talked to you, she thanked you, she knows you're alive. So he's saying all that because Rick is infatuated with Deborah and sees her as perfection. And so since Rick is kind of finding her attractive, and Terry's like, well, hey, like, maybe you could try to get with her. And Rick is like, well, if she's with somebody, it's like, well, yeah, but she's with Greg. So here's where the two of them, they start talking about music, and then Rick gives his headphones over to Terry so she can listen to them. As it seems they like a lot of the same similar bits of music. So in the background, we have Sandy with a girl. She's going on and she's talking about how Terry is to dress like Elvis but looks like Ralph Macchio, the Karate Kid. And that's a funny thing because, of course, Greg, the bully of this movie, is to have been from the Karate Kid. And it's funny that this is to be referenced here. I guess as a little Easter egg of this movie, which I find funny. So we now have Terry making her way back to this gym class with a hospital note saying that she has these stomach issues and can't go to PE. The coach goes on to say, it's like, well, you're not going to get out of this though so easily. I have something for you to do. So Terry goes on and starts handing towels to all the guys coming out of the shower. And at one point, Reptile is to bring in a lizard in the shower. It's great. So we have at one point where Greg is going on and getting his own towel. And there's at one point where Rick ends up mentioning about how all the guys know how small Greg's wang is, and I'm trying to figure out a way to less cuss in this because I'm sure something's gonna get flagged somewhere. Um, but anyways, uh, so Rick, he goes on to see Terry. It's like, oh yeah, it's me, Rick. Yeah. So uh, Rick gets a towel and walks off, and Amelia Terry is like, yeah, nice. Nice to see you. Yeah. So, uh, So Terry is now waiting by the car to pick up Rick so that way they could leave together. So Sandy is there to kind of intercept before Rick gets there because Sandy is interested in Terry and wants to ask Terry out. So I think Terry, while she's talking to Sandy, uh, Sandy brings up the fact it's like, well, hey, you must be new here. Do you probably have a girlfriend or anything? And Terry's like, well, I have a long distance relationship thing going on. And so, and here's where Terry's like, hey, Rick, you wanna get a ride? And so of course he does. So, uh, at some point, Rick gets into the car and is like, well, hey, that girl seems pretty nice. Like it seems like she went out of her way to talk to you. Maybe that tells you something. And Terry's like, well, yeah, I don't like girls that say the word bitchin'. So the two of them drive off. So, and I probably cuss more than enough in this. God dang it. I'm sure probably this is going to be the one that's going to hurt me, no matter how many times I'm to be going on and being like, yeah, I'm trying to avoid cussing, then I just see something else flying off the handle. Anyways, so the two of them make their way into Rick's home, and so uh, they talk about, hey, you want a beer? And I'm like, are they in high school? But I guess if their parents isn't home, I guess they won't notice that a beer goes missing, right? So they talk about girlfriends, they talk about prom, and and if uh and if Rick has gone on to ask anybody about the prom, and if he has a choice of who to ask. So Terry even goes in further to ask Rick if he's a virgin. I'm like, isn't this a little much to go on and be laying on to ask Rick so early about this? Like, I wouldn't probably go with the V card so early in their conversation, but I guess like in this movie, like they aren't gonna really have much of time to get into all of this with the time limit they have in this filming. So I guess like all this just needs to be really out there really so quickly. So Terry will go on and probably with this line of dialogue, we can see that Terry is starting to get more and more interested with Rick. The more personal she's getting with him. Uh, Rick goes on to mention about how he's not a virgin, and Rick ends up asking Terry if he is one or she is one also, and asks if like, oh, have you slept with a lot of girls? And Terry's like, well, not exactly. Uh, so Rick has this story about how since he's not a virgin, about how right after his father had died, how there'd been a girl that came by and did sleep with him. So that's his story. Yeah, like if anything, he's being very gentlemanly about it. He's not going into details, which I appreciate that. Because if anything, I'd go on and I'd be the same way. It's like I would probably go on and I would divulge that. Yeah, I would have probably to mention that I had slept with somebody, but I'm not going to go into the details about it because no. Um. Anyways, if either that, if there's a possibility that there is to be a girl that is to go on or whatever, um, like that would be a different story. Because eventually there would be the asking of like, well, how experienced are you? Da 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 da. Like that's very different. But if anything, like I'm not gonna just tell. I'm not gonna stonewall everybody. But anyways, so but cut away. So Terry and Rick go to Rick's room, and here's where we find a bunch of like James Brown, which I'm not quite sure exactly if I'm getting that name right. We see like a cardboard cutout, I think, on the wall, or it looks something like that, where he has like this big huge picture of the guy that's like slapped on his door in his room. If anything, honestly, it looks like this room was very much rushed together. Plus, like Rick has this like just dartboard that I'm like, okay, why does it make sense that he has this dartboard? But I guess it's there. Um, Plus, also, if this guy was having this dartboard for a very long time, you would see a lot of holes on that wall, um, and there isn't. The wall is completely clean. So, yeah, they rushed this room together. So, yeah, it's James Brown. I got it right. Thank God. So, so Rick mentions his interest and why he's so infatuated with James Brown because it all started with him. Yeah, like Prince, Michael Jackson were all basically going on and copying James Brown in a way. And so Terry goes on uh to ask Rick here, well then hey, like how about we go on and how about we play some James? And Rick is like, no. And Terry's like, why? Rick goes on and says, like, well, hey, like when I hear James Brown, I like to dance, and if anything, I like to do that privately. And it's like, okay, yeah, like do whatever you want to do in your own your own privacy. It's like, if anything, yeah. Um, like if anything, too, like it's so interesting how trusting Rick is of Terry, and I guess you could probably say that they're very much becoming fast friends, or that if anything, like what does Rick have to lose anyways? So he can just be very honest with Terry, and maybe that's who really Rick is. Um, but no one else just knows uh, that a guy like Rick exists, so that's why he doesn't have much friends besides Terry. So we now cut to Terry and Buddy who are eating pizza, and Terry is complaining to Buddy about how he's not doing the dishes. And Buddy's like, hey, I'll do the dishes. And then he goes on and he takes the pizza that's on the plate, shoves it onto the pizza box, and then puts the plate back where it was displayed by the fine china or whatever, and then takes Terry's plate and kind of does the same thing. It's like, look, I did the dishes. It's not the same thing, buddy. Plus, also, you didn't really clean those, now did you? Oh yeah, he takes the stuff from the plate and just puts it in the trash, and then just says that he cleaned the dishes. So so here's the scene where Buddy goes to the phone and he starts bickering with somebody on the phone, and we're like, who the heck is he answering to? And then we find out by the end of it all, it's like, oh yeah, mom says hi. And that's the big joke by the end of it. So so Terry goes on and she makes a phone call, and we're like, okay, who is she calling? And we find out that it's Rick. It's like, soft spot for him, man. Like, you like him. Just admit it. Just admit it. You like him, Terry. It's okay. It's okay if you like him. So Terry goes on to try to figure out a way to do something with Rick because she likes him. So Terry goes on to call up Rick and is to sound like a guy again. And it's like, uh, hey, how's it hanging? And by the end, she calls him like a scumbag or something, which is weird. Uh, Honestly, no dude to dude friend would call one another a scumbag. Uh, if anything, I think, yeah, there are guys that do go on and rib one another. Um, or we have like weird, goofy nicknames for one another or whatever. Like there'd be some guys where I'd go on and like take their last name and kind of make the jokes of them. Um, but if anything, like, yeah, we would still be friends. Maybe not to this day. Probably there's a reason for that. But if anything, yeah, like uh, there would be that. So like there'd be this one guy. His last name was Shore, so I'd call him For Sure. Um, for some odd reason, we became friends anyways, and like we would go on and have these like gaming sleepover things, which I was shit at video games. I probably still am to this day. Um, but yeah, like at least I had that going on in my life. So so Terry is calling Rick because she wants him to wear something really hip and cool tomorrow to school. How would a guy like Rick know what's hip or cool whatsoever as far as a wardrobe is from what he wears on a day-to-day basis? So because Terry's goal is that she wants to try to get Rick a date for the prom. So, like, hey, wear your best tomorrow. So, so the following day at school, Terry makes her way over to Rick, who's just wearing this brown shirt or brown dress shirt. It's like, this is what you're gonna wear. If anything, honestly, with what Terry's wearing, um, this is actually pretty stylistic. There's a load of layers that she's wearing, but I guess that's probably a sign of the times. Um, but it did seem to attract women what Terry was wearing. Uh, Plus, also with Terry being a girl, obviously she would know what would be a thing that would be appealing um, to wear. Obviously, because women have a better keen fashion sense. A lot of times, guys, we just throw together. Quite often, that's our fashion sense. But if anything, I tried more throughout the years to wear things that are a little bit more flary and a little bit more out there. Even though it looks weird, I'm like, dude, I don't freaking care. Uh, if anything, yeah, like guys should probably do things of wardrobes that it's to have them stick out more. I don't care if it's to be something that would make you look stupid. Wear something that makes you look stupid. Because if anything, you're way better off than just wearing boring uh, black or white or just plain shirts. Like right now, I'm wearing a Doctor Strange shirt, and how weird is that? Um, but at least it's something that sticks out a little bit more. Um, Anyways, so we have Terry that is to say to Rick, it's like, okay, pick out a girl and go on and ask her out. So Rick is to say, or so Terry asks Rick, it's like, hey, you seeing any girl in here that you find interesting? And Rick is like, red sweater. So we look down the way to the end of this table and see a girl with this red sweater and blonde hair and glasses. So Terry tells Rick a little bit of a tip, which I like this whole like kind of wing woman thing or wing Terry thing. I don't know. So because in all honesty, I would watch this thing called The Pickup Artist, And yeah, most of the time it'd be guys guiding guys, but also there'd be a girl that comes in to guide the guys to help them out. And I think like that's actually a better idea, um, for girls to try and help a guy figure out a way um, to meet women, because that's actually a better idea than having a guy do it, I feel. But anyways, so Terry goes on to tell Rick that, hey, just tell her that she has pretty eyes or something like that. And so Rick goes over there and starts talking to this girl who is Janine. And so as he goes over, and Rick immediately doesn't really have much to say. Terry's like, yeah, he like, say about the eye, say the eye thing. So Rick goes on and mentions about how Janine has beautiful eyes, but then she's wearing sunglasses, and he's like, I bet you do. Yeah, smooth operator. Couldn't have gone on and said anything maybe about her hair, how her hair is so wafty today, or maybe you could have just gone on and just been like, you know what, like looking over there at the other um, side of the table, I was just mesmerized by you, and I couldn't help myself but want to come over here and ask you about whether or not you have a prom date, which unfortunately she does have one. So Rick comes up with his excuse that he's just making a survey, and he thanks her for her information. He walks off. So here's one thing. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Even Reptile was to go on and get a prom date. What the fuck? So, like, I didn't get a prom date, but a guy like Reptile can get a prom date? Not really going on and being uh, kind of an a-hole about this, but like, if Reptile could come up with a prom date, why was I like so hard to get one? Well, I get, yeah, well, like I probably should have got on and like I was not really a very verbal person in high school, which look at me now. Like, still not a really best talker, but like if anything, like yeah, I very much changed that to where I was always just like like I think 90% of my answers were a lot of hms and haws, or um, a lot of my answers would not go on and be a person that says much. When anybody would go on and say to do things, I'd just be like, okay, or yes, or whatever, and wouldn't have much to say beyond that, just because I was just like, how can we get this conversation as quickly done as possible? Um, yeah, it probably took until I probably did YouTube to where I really came out of my shell, because I was never that guy. I still probably am not, but I'm trying at least. So, but I always seem to just kind of look at like, okay, like why is it that this person is doing so well, but I'm not, or like you always kind of have to like very much always uh have that weird thing of wanting to judge yourself compared to other people, and that's a horrible road to go through of being so uh much a person that is to be of a person of have or have nots, or going on and being a person that is to be overly critical of yourself, or having to go on and make just judgments, um, and what have you. But what what I was getting at there, um, is just like the more that I feel that you kind of do that, where you're kind of putting yourself against another person, it's just going to hurt you in the end. It's going to be the wasting of time that you allow yourself too often to take. That's only just going to make you more depressed and going to hurt your feelings and just drive you into unhappiness to where you're going to get discouraged doing anything in your life uh, because you're looking at other people instead of just being grateful for what you have or what you've achieved and and yeah. Where was I going with that? Probably nowhere. Like I always go on with all these reviews, I go nowhere with any of them. But anyways, so I'm sure in a nutshell there was a point that I was getting somewhere. Anyways, so now at this point that Rick has gone on to ask a plethora of different women to the prom, and Terry's bringing Rick to a girl named Beth, hoping that she'll go on and she'll be the one that says yes to him, and it won't. Uh, Rick goes on and sees a girl that's getting her bike and leaving school, or leaving to go. And so Rick goes on and asks Beth out, saying, "Hey, what is it that you're doing Saturday night?" And Beth goes on and she says that she's busy. And so then Rick goes on this tangent of asking, it's like, well, what are you doing this day? Over and over and over again. He just asks, like, if she was busy yesterday. And Beth is like, no, but you can go on and keep asking me out because she'll probably still have the same answer. So Beth leaves, and all of a sudden Sandy comes in, and it's to try to be the saving grace. So Sandy goes to Terry. It's like, well, hey, it seems like Rick is going on and trying to ask everybody out. Every single human being who female is to be out in school. So Sandy's like, well, hey, I could probably set Rick up with somebody. And Rick is looking at Terry. It's like, huh? Like, so all of a sudden, like the roles are reversed here, and Rick is kind of guiding Terry what to say and what to do. It's like, please, yeah, like go on and say yes to her. Yeah, go on and let's do this double date. And Terry obviously doesn't want to do it, but since the begging of Rick is happening, Terry gives in to what Rick wants, and then Rick is just kind of dancing, like, yeah, yeah. And Sandy all of a sudden looks at Rick, and then Rick is like, "Oh, no, I'm not listening to anything that you guys are saying. I'm just gonna wander off my eyes off to the side." And so, uh, so after that, we then have Buddy. Buddy is kind of pulling the risky business. He's wearing this robe, and he's bizarrely putting this like either towel or something in between his legs. And so Terry comes in and has asked Buddy if she can borrow more of his clothes because she hasn't borrowed enough of it, evidently. So, and then also asked Buddy what the heck that he's doing, and he's supposedly cleaning the house. Yeah, I'm sure the towel wiping his junk is really cleaning the house. So, so the reason why Buddy is cleaning is because he is to say how he's going to have Linda come over and they're supposedly going to be doing algebra. But really, what Buddy is going to try to do with Linda is to try to get laid, because of course that's his agenda. That's what he wants to try to do. So if anything, I'm not quite sure how exactly Buddy is going to go on to be a good tutor for this girl. If anything, maybe actually Linda is to actually be tutoring Buddy. That would make more sense in my brain. Um, so maybe Buddy is to go on and not do well in algebra on purpose, so that way he can just get this girl to come to his home and be a tutor. Or maybe he just lied to say, "Hey, I need help with tutoring," so that way she'll come over to his place. Which actually is a pretty smart tactic, I guess, on Buddy's term, but also eventually Linda will sniff that out with Buddy and eventually go on and and be like, "Yeah, I would not be interested in sleeping with you." But then Buddy is like, "Well, would it change anything if I mentioned that I'm hung like a horse?" And she's like, "Well, are you?" And Buddy is to be honest and says no. So that Linda is like, "Yeah, no, not interested." So, but at least she probably appreciates his honesty. So, so Terry is to explain to Buddy uh, where Terry is going to be with the whole dating of this girl, Sandy. And Buddy is kind of upset that Terry's going on to this date because, if anything, like, yeah, like she's playing with this girl's emotions, leading her on. And so, also, Terry is only doing this double date to help out Rick to make him feel good. And so Buddy is to go on and say to Terry, it's like, well, shouldn't you be concerned about this date? Because what if, like, Sandy is to really want to go on and sleep with you or tear off your clothes? Like, what are you going to do? So, so Buddy goes on and just says, like, well, hey, if anything happens, you have my number. So so now we have the double date going on here. There's a clinking of beer and Coca Colas. So at some point, we have a separation of Jill, the girl that Rick is going to be dating briefly here. So Jill goes on and mentions about how it seems that Terry and Sandy need some privacy, that the two of them should go off and do their own thing. Rick turns to Jill, it's like, Jill, you animal. And so the two of them go off. And granted, this is before Rick is to change his clothing in this movie. So how is it that Rick is really wooing this girl over so quickly? But I guess we have to go on to realize that Jill probably isn't going to proceed to be Rick's girlfriend at this point. So all of this is for naught, anyways. I hope Rick got something from a girl named Jill, but we'll never know. So the next thing we see is Terry trying to stop Rick from leaving with Jill to come up with any excuse to not get to have Terry alone with Sandy. So, but it happens anyways. So, as Terry and Sandy are alone, uh, Sandy says that Jill will make Rick very happy, and so Sandy is hoping that that's what she'll be able to do with, of course, Terry to make her happy. All of a sudden, as Sandy is to start to tickle Terry and then eventually start to reach for Terry's nethers, she goes on and pulls out a sock and is to go on and say, it's like, well, how small could it really be that you need to put a sock in your pants? And Terry's like, yeah, you have no idea. So Sandy admits to Terry that she does like Terry, and Terry is to try to take one of the beers. And so now we cut to Buddy with Linda and now Kevin as the third wheel to basically be a C blocker. So Buddy turns to Linda and asks for "Hey, more cold duck" as he passes the champagne. So Barry goes on and starts pouring it to Linda and then pouring it to Kevin. So Kevin says to Buddy that Terry promised that she'd be home tonight, and that he won't leave until Terry comes back. And Buddy is trying to figure out ways to get rid of Kevin by seeing a movie or doing anything. So as Terry arrives at the house, obviously drunk, Terry then goes on to realize that Kevin is waiting in the house, so she scrambles to get up to her room and change and then arrive to see Kevin and kind of shift her hair. And in the meantime, Buddy is talking about how Terry has joined a cult and is coming up with all kinds of excuses why Terry is gone. So as Terry arrives and both her and Buddy hug, they're like, "Oh yeah, the cult I guess didn't stick." So Kevin is completely upset. Kevin is very upset that Terry had cut her hair. Also, Kevin is also upset because he realizes that Terry is obviously drunk. Terry is to go on to make an excuse that she had gone on to try and change her clothes in the closet or something, and she had completely fallen asleep. That's her excuse. So Terry hugs onto Kevin, and Terry goes on to say to Kevin that she'll make it up to him, but she won't. And so Kevin says to Terry, it's like, well, can I at least tuck you in? And Terry's like, well, not tonight. And Terry says that she's working very hard on an article, and so Terry's even going out of her way to figure out a way to get rid of Kevin. And so Terry goes on and walks Kevin out to his car, and now, since Buddy and Linda are alone, Buddy is quickly trying to figure out a way for Linda to just go crazy here, rip off their clothes, get naked. And of course, Linda is not having it because she's a nice girl. Good for her. So Linda should try to make the excuse for it's getting kind of late, and if anything, she has to get up, for school and everything. So Linda goes on and is to bring Buddy down easy by saying that he's a nice guy, and Buddy's like, "Oh, the kiss of death! Why not shove me in the friend zone while you're at it?" Linda. Like, why not just put a stake in my heart and just drive it in there? So I'm really over embellishing what all Buddy is saying. Is because really I have to go on and figure out what I'm going to have to say next. Plus, I'm also trying to be funny, and it's stupid. Anyways, so uh, and here's where Buddy goes on and tells Linda that he's hung like a bear, and she's like, "Well, is that true?" And Buddy's like, "Nope." And so Linda leaves, opens the door to see Terry, and Linda tells her that she likes her hair. Of course she does, because if anything, Terry is a seductive dynamo that, that even the girls find Terry attractive, no matter what gender she is. Like they're just like, give me some of that short hair. Anyways, so as Terry now makes her way up the stairs on all fours, dog crawling because she is so drunk, as well as also uh, uh, makes a joke about how Buddy was closer to having sex than, or uh, Terry goes on to make a joke to Buddy about how she was closer to having sex than he was, which is funny. Um, so the two of them say goodnight to one another, and Buddy apologizes to his own Wang, calling it Spike. Okay, so the following morning, uh, Terry is to wake up very hungover. I'm kind of curious also the age of these actresses and actors, because I'm kind of curious how old they actually are. Um, because I'm assuming they're probably much older than probably their actual high school ages, is what I'm assuming in this movie. It would be kind of curious to find that out. Anyways, so because I think even the Power Rangers were probably in their like early 20s or something when they probably filmed Power Rangers. Probably was to have been a thing. So here's where we have another phone call from their mom again, and Terry is refusing to speak to her mother because of how hungover she is. At some point, Buddy is going on and cracking jokes and even saying how drunk that Terry is, and so Buddy goes on to say how much he misses uh, their mother, and as he hangs up the phone, uh, Buddy is to say that their mother completely thought that he was joking about everything. So, because I guess Buddy could go on and say anything to his mother, and she would just think that he's joking. So now, Rick goes on to, or Rick, Terry goes on to make his way to Rick, and apologizes for last night. Uh, Rick goes on and makes a joke about how Terry's going to set him up with Sandy's grandmother next. And so here's where Terry mentions about how Rick dresses. That if anything, they're going to have to change that. That if anything, uh, Terry wants Rick to go with her to this store so that way they can buy him clothes. And so Terry's like, well, hey, I have credit cards. If anything, you can pay me back later. So Terry and Rick make their way to school, and now we have Rick with like 30 different layers on. He legit has like 1, 2, 3 layers on. I am just like, this is insane. So he has a blue shirt on, a purplish dress shirt. Then he has what looks like a blazer maybe over that. Like I guess you could probably say that a lot of people do probably go on to school and wear like formal like suits and this and that. I've seen people at school do that. Um, but yeah, but I'm like, man, this is just a lot of layers. Um, if anything, whenever I was to go on and go to school, like I think I would probably go on and wear a hodgepodge of just random that never made any sense to anybody. But um, but yeah, but I wouldn't go on and wear like three of. I'd be like, man, I'd be getting too hot. I'd be sweating too much. Like I don't know. So I guess I'm just consistently making jokes about these layers. So so Rick goes on and immediately walks by Deborah. Uh, And Rick mentions how this is all kind of weird, and Terry's like, well, yeah, because you're not used to wearing these kind of clothes. So they walk through and they have Deborah spot Rick, and so they start talking to her. They mention about how Rick has gotten a new haircut, he went shopping, and is now feel welcome to the 80s. Uh, Greg makes his way to Rick and Terry and is to compliment, of course, Rick on his outfit. And uh, inevitably, also, we, of course, have Greg who's upset that Deborah is paying them any attention. So, as Greg is going on and insulting these two guys, or these two people, Deborah goes on and kind of takes offense to Greg and is to start to get annoyed with him. And so Deborah goes on and says that Greg acts tough, uh, but he doesn't really hate you guys. Terry goes on and is to say that deep down that this guy's an asshole, as Deborah says that deep down he's just insecure. So the two guys walk off and Greg is again upset that Deborah was to give these guys no never mind or to just go on uh, and talk crap about Greg kind of behind his back. So now we're at the cafeteria and Greg now has to figure out a way to get even with Rick. So Greg goes on and makes his way to this cafeteria table, and these nerds immediately know what's going to go on, that this guy is going to lift up this table again as he's to put on these workout gloves. So the guys immediately stand up so that way he won't go on and spill their lunch. And Greg is like, no, sit down, guys. Like too much stress. Yeah, like go on and just like have a nice lunch. So Greg goes on and makes his way to Rick, and here's where he takes his tray, spills it all over him, and is to say, oh yeah, spaghetti, that's really gonna stain. And then he pours the spaghetti noodles uh, on Rick's chest. Honestly, you would think with those white gloves of Greg, he would try to avoid spilling or touching any of the spaghetti because it would get all over his gloves, but I guess he doesn't care, right? So Terry makes her way to Rick and asks if she missed anything. And so the two of them make their way to the bathroom where they're gonna clean Rick off. So so at this point they're talking about Greg and how much of an intimidating presence he is. And so Rick starts to go on, starts peeing in the bathroom, and Terry's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "What you should do in a bathroom, peeing." So Terry's like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." Uh, so as Rick goes on and makes his way to the sink after peeing, Terry is just to go on and say to Rick how nice he looked today and how Greg had kind of ruined it for him. And so here's where Terry is going on and mentioning kind of like where the two of them are. Uh, in the men's room, leaning against the urinal, uh, talking about fighting and and bonding. So and how they've kind of had it with Greg and how they want to go on and how they want to get even with him. So they make their way back to the cafeteria, and now Greg has kind of gotten rid of some of his layers, and now he's wearing this blue dress shirt, which is like, okay, when did he have a like out of all the layers that he had, I guess the blue one was to be the last layer that he had. So either that or somehow he had just a spare dress shirt that he just had with him. So here is where Buddy comes in randomly in this school. I guess they can just go on and let anybody just come to this school because isn't Buddy in a completely different school than this? But either way. So the reason why Buddy is here is for him to talk about uh Kevina, which is really just Kevin, but it's like he has to make up a mock name. Uh and so Buddy starts to talk about how Kevina was upset that Terry wasn't there for him, and how, of course, how of course, uh, Kevina will be looking for Terry later on. So also, Buddy starts to talk about Terry's hairy chest and how he's such a stallion and this and that, and Buddy says to Terry, it's like, yeah, show Rick your hairy chest. Bit of funny here. Uh, so after Buddy is to give Terry this warning, he starts to notice the girls around, and so Rick goes on to kind of repeat what Buddy had gone on to say. It's like, you have a girlfriend, uh, named Kavina. Like, what kind of a name is that? Uh, Stallion, you say? So Buddy goes on and finds a girl by this table and grabs her hand, saying that honestly, your touch is the reason he went through puberty. I think he was gonna go through puberty regardless. So here is where Greg again makes his way to this table and kind of teases that he's probably going to lift the table again. And the guys stand up. So at this point, Rick has had enough with this. He's just so annoyed by the fact that Greg kind of is able to do whatever he wants and gets whatever he wants. So Greg finally is to try to get everyone's attention by standing up on this table and says, "Can I have your attention, everyone?" Every day at lunch, we have a special treat, and he's going on and eventually talking about Greg, how he goes on and uses his muscles uh, to spill food off of tables, and how he hides behind the mask. And I was like, what was the mask point about? Like, that wasn't really a good like, I think he probably should have said hide behind his muscles or hide behind something. Like, the mask thing didn't quite mesh up to me. So Rick is trying to figure out from the origins of Greg when exactly he had got on to decide that he needed to spill food. Did it come back from when he was a baby to where he often spilled peas? And so this gets Greg's attention to jump on this table and be very upset, of course, with Rick. So here's where Rick goes on and basically says that Greg has a small schwanz and goes on to lift up his pinky. So this is what gets Greg really upset. So Greg goes on to get ever so closer to Rick, and then here is where Rick is to say, to a tribute to you, Greg. Let's for one last time all lift up our tables and have food spill all over Greg so he'll know how it feels. So everybody lifts up their table, has food spill all over Greg, and now Greg wants to get even with Rick and he's like, I'm going to kill him. And Deborah grabs Greg and just tells him to let it slide. Uh, to try to figure out a way to resolve this and like buy him ice cream or some goofy thing like that. And Greg is like, no, I'm not gonna do any of that. So here's where we have the nerdy guys that are making fun of Greg and they're doing this like song or whatever. And so Buddy passes by and is mocking Greg for they're being putting on his shoes. So after this, we have Terry and Rick who are now at Cloud Nine. Uh, Rick has probably not felt so good ever in his life than going on and getting even with Greg. So how at this point Rick is almost a celebrity for how he's gone on to basically make fun of Greg at this point. So now, here is where Rick has to go on and think that he's unstoppable at this point, that he should probably finally go on and ask Deborah to go out to prom with him. Because at this point, Deborah and Greg's relationship has gone completely south to where it seems that Deborah has no longer any interest in Greg. And the relationship seems to have soured and broken up at this point. So at this point, Terry is saying to Rick, it's like, well, hey, this is the time to go on and ask anybody out to go to the prom, and they're more than likely to say yes to you. And Rick is like, anybody? And Terry's like, anybody. So Rick goes on and makes his way to Deborah and says, like, you know what? Like, today has been a really crazy day. But you know what? Like, what are you doing for prom? And like, would you like to go to prom with me? And Deborah's like, I'd love to. Terry's heart has completely sunk. And it's like, really? You're gonna go with Deborah to the prom? Like, ugh. So, so Rick, again, is to make his way to Terry and to just be like, I'm going with Deborah. I'm going with Deborah the prom. And again, like, this guy is just so happy. And so so Rick is to now tell Terry, it's like, I'm not going to the prom unless you go. Like, go with it, like, go with Sandy. Like, you and Sandy, it seems we're working out right well. So Terry's like, no, 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 no. And so Rick says to Terry, I am not going to the dance unless you are going. So I'll go on and I'll grab Terry, or I'll grab Terry. I'll grab Deborah and tell her right now I'm not going unless you go. So so Terry tells Rick, it's like, I will find somebody. Like, believe me, I'll figure out someone to ask. So yeah, Terry goes on and figures out exactly who to ask, and it's Denise, who knows what's going on anyways, to play into all this. So interestingly enough, like, Terry has to beg Denise to go to prom with her, and it's really funny. Denise goes and asks, like, well, hey, if we're gonna go to this prom, like, I want a limo, I want the nines, I want everything. Um, so so if anything, um, Terry also goes on to say that Rick is going with Deborah, and that Terry kind of re-explains all of this to Denise of why she needs to go to the prom and go with somebody. And so Terry is to just be upset that Rick is going with Deborah because he just doesn't understand, or Terry doesn't understand why Rick is going with Deborah. It's the girl that Rick has always kind of pined away for. So of course he's gonna go on and his fantasy girl try to ask her out and hope that she'll say yes. So Terry says the reason why Rick shouldn't go out with Deborah is really just because she's trouble. If anything, it'll lead to Greg being upset that Rick is going to be dating Deborah, and it's just going to get Rick into a fight with Greg more, and it's just wasteful. Which, that's kind of how, honestly, the prom plays out. Deborah goes on and is with Rick, and Greg goes on to seek Rick out and just starts beating him up, and also throws Terry into this beach, uh, into the water. So uh, so after Terry has gone on to say to Denise and ask her and beg her to go to the prom, um, she then says that she's gonna go out with Kevin, and she's trying to wear the dress that he likes the most, so that way she can appease him and everything like that. And so, and then they're talking about how, like, well, yeah, like, you really haven't gone on and spent much time with him since the sex change. So So Denise leaves, and Buddy is so desperate again to try to be with Denise, even though she won't give him the time of day. Uh, uh, Buddy is trying to hope that he can appease to Denise and like, well, hey, we're young, we could be wild, and Denise is like, yeah, we could also pick a name from a phone book. So as they open the door, all of a sudden we have Sandy coming in. God dang, Sandy, you are a patient person. You're working overtime to try and win Terry over. Um, and I appreciate you, Sandy. Big ups to Sandy here. I get it also that this character needs to consistently be in this film, but still. Um, man, is this a girl that has to go on and work tirelessly to get a person that is not interested in her? And man, I feel so sad for her, but yeah, it is what it is with the story. So Sandy is opening the door to give a gift of fishes, and so with how Sandy's character kind of plays out, is there eventually a reveal that Sandy? Well, I guess by the end of it, they do reveal that Terry is a woman. So yeah, I guess by the end of this, we can figure out uh, that Sandy's in the know by the end of this film, anyways. Anyway, so Terry's going on and getting dressed, and then all of a sudden she starts to make her way down the stairs to find that Sandy is making her way up the stairs. Terry realizes that she has to go on and completely change her entire outfit to need to then talk to Sandy uh, as basically the male version of Terry now. This is like Mrs. Doubtfire, where Robin Williams has to quick change into being Mrs. Doubtfire, while also trying to be who Robin is in that film. Um, because she's talking to this woman that is to be the God, what is the word? The woman that deals with uh, the parents and their kids because Robin had gone through a divorce, and so it's just kind of getting an update of like, okay, Robin's character, like, what do you have as a job, blah 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 blah, like, kind of doing like an assessment of whether if not that Robin is a good uh, parent to his kids. Anyways, so social worker, is that it? I don't know. So Terry goes on and completely changes into the male version of herself, good enough to disguise herself for Sandy. And then, as the two of them start talking, and Sandy thinks that they're going to go into that same room, uh, Terry then goes on to say, it's like, oh no, that's my sister's room. If anything, my actual room is over here. So, wait a minute. So, why would Terry be changing in a room that is not hers? That's a little confusing. But anyways, so like that is a red flag right out of the gate there of like, why did she have to say that? But anyways, so she could have made some thing up where it's like, oh, that's a bathroom or blah blah blah. They could have said anything. Um, moving on here. So Terry takes Sandy into Buddy's room, and so so they go into Buddy's room, and here is where Terry goes on, and it is to basically steal and copy and paste what Buddy was to say early about the centerfold women, about how some of them are to go on and dislike toxic waste and this like. So seriously, Terry rips off everything that Buddy said earlier in the film, which I thought was hilarious. So, uh, but if anything, Buddy is saying that it's like, oh no, like, don't you know my brother, the sex maniac? Uh, and how, if anything, like Sandy didn't feel like she got that treatment when she was with Terry before, how he was very respectful. And Buddy says, yeah, my brother is one of a kind. so so Buddy is to now tell Terry, yeah, there's somebody waiting in the car for you, and he doesn't like waiting. So now Terry has to go on and figure out a way to try to get rid of Sandy while also going on and needing to at some point talk to Kevin and tell him what's going on or try to get rid of him. So all of a sudden, the further that Terry and Sandy start talking here and Buddy leaves, Terry explains to Sandy how, like, she appreciates how Sandy is to drop by, but she's really in a rush to leave. And all of a sudden, here is where Sandy goes on and removes her top. Ooh la la, ooh yeah, ooh, whatever. So, uh, so they're talking about the fish, and Terry goes on and is to grab a thing of pizza and just feed them that. And so Terry is hoping that Sandy will get distracted by eating the fish while Terry can leave and speak to Kevin. So Terry then runs off in a quick change and adjusts her hair to then run down to speak to then Kevin. So Kevin is completely upset by the fact that Terry should be ready by now because Kevin confirmed to Terry when exactly they should be leaving. And Kevin's like, well, yeah, if anything, we discussed that we should be here at 7:30, and by the time I got here, you were supposedly dressed to kill, right? And Terry's head to toe just wearing sweats, and I guess really trying to figure out a way to get rid of Kevin again. So Terry tells Kevin that she thought that he said 8:30 and not 7:30, and then he should just come back an hour later, trying to get rid of him. So, and I also like the fact that that Kevin grabs Buddy's face because that's just how upset he's getting. So, now, as Terry is trying to get rid of Kevin, Terry has a moment with Buddy explaining Sandy and how she's half naked up there, and figure out a way to uh, speak to Sandy and to go on and try to, like, well, hey, since Terry can't go on, and at this point, like, she's busy with Kevin, that Buddy needs to go on and needs to interact with Sandy to just kind of keep her busy because Terry can't. So So Sandy makes her way back to Kevin, and Buddy makes her way up to Sandy, opens the door. Sandy goes on and kind of hides her cleavage, and so uh Buddy starts to figure out a way to smooth talk Sandy. It's like, well, hey, why are you going on? Why are you trying to cover up? Because if anything, you're in a room full of naked women. So Buddy is also to try to say, like, well, hey, would you go on and would you be more comfortable if I took my shirt off too? Which, of course, by this time, sadly, Buddy is to figure out a way to be able to get rid of women. And as Sandy leaves, Buddy just says how nice of a girl that she is. And yeah, so Kevin and Terry are now at Kevin's car. And so Kevin is to now just be upset by the fact of how disheveled Terry looks. Like, you know, I used to have a really hot girlfriend once. Do you know her? Her name was Terry. For some reason, she just disappeared one day. So Terry goes on and says, like, that she's just been busy and she's still the same person. And so Terry is to mention how she's just been so under pressure and she has an article due by Monday and coming up with every excuse for her to not go on and not to spend any time focusing on Kevin and his needs. His needs. Anyways, so uh and so Kevin's like, well, it's nice you have a hobby, but let's get serious. And Terry's like, a hobby? It's the most important thing to me. This article is the most important thing to me. So eventually Terry is to talk to Kevin, and so the next thing we see is Terry now talking to Buddy, and she's in her tuxedo ready to go to the prom. So now at this point, Buddy is just so upset by the fact that their parents will be coming home soon, and he hasn't been able to defile any woman while they've been away. So, uh, let me pause here for a second. I'm trying to figure out how to transition here. So, Buddy and Terry have this moment here, and then the phone rings, and then Terry picks it up and realizes that it's Kevin. Terry goes on, the more and more she talks to Kevin and mentions how busy she is, and how at some point the two of them need a serious talk, eventually mentioning that Mr. Wonderful is going to be soon Mr. History. And Buddy confirms that with Terry. It's like, all right. So Terry then goes off to the prom. It seems that everybody, as far as the people who are cast in this movie, seem to have a date. The two nerds have a date to the prom. The reptile has a date to the prom. Everybody has a date to the prom. Why did they all get so lucky? Man, well, I think in kind of more modern day, like I would assume more people would probably go without somebody than go with somebody. Like, I went to the prom, and like I was just like, well, yeah, like prom should be an experience that at least I should have, even though I'm not going with anybody. And how much that hurt me, just mentally and physically. No, actually, my prom was really good. What I did was I went there, and there was a girl that was in like my acting class, and what had happened was the two of us met, and she was like, "Oh, like you're not with anybody?" I'm like, "No, I didn't ask anybody," or like it just didn't happen. Like, if, and so this girl who I'll never forget her name, Ashley. She was the nicest girl ever. And if anything, we like eye to eye, like saw one another, kind of days after. I was like, it was nice. Um, yeah, she throughout a good time that I was there, like we danced together, and like that was great. Like I was just so happy. If anything, for whatever reason, like I was having to get like texts, and like I couldn't hear my phone because the music was so loud. But yeah, I was definitely getting texts, and yeah, like the prom afterwards, horrible. Because if anything, I got lost. Uh, there was a mistake there made because I thought I was supposed to go somewhere, and evidently I made the mistake. So that part was horrible. Uh, but everything before that, if I could just block out the end of the prom, I could just say that I really had a good night. But but that ending though, it just sucked. So maybe at some point there is always a second chance to redo my prom and have it be better. Because there is supposedly those like second chance prom things. So maybe that could happen at some point. Wouldn't that be great? Anyways, let me know in the comments below how your prom went. If you went, or if you didn't go. If it was shit, maybe it was good. Let me know in the comments below. If anything, maybe you went to your prom and just had fun. You didn't care. Uh, and or maybe you went to your prom and it just went amazingly way better than you thought it was going to be. Some people have very interesting prom stories, I feel, so I'm always interested to just hear other people's. I know people probably didn't tune into this entire video to get to this point. I don't care. Uh, I'm just going to ask anyways. Because I'm sure a lot of people probably tuned out at some point in this review for how I stumbled and fumbled through this whole entire review. Cause yeah, I that really horribly happened. I don't care, man. Like, if anything, I knew that this is gonna be a little bit harder to review at certain points of it because I can't remember every second to second of this movie. Anyways, so let's go into the prom. So everybody's starting to just dance it out here, and so so Denise is kind of happy being at this prom because there's so many people here that don't know who she is and don't know that she was priorly fat, I guess. Which is like, well, like if anything, Denise, either way, you look kind of great now. So, or kind of great, you look great now. My apologies. So like, if anything, yeah, like, so oddly enough, while Denise is dancing with Terry, there's this whole time where this like guitarist is kind of looking at Terry like, you, yeah, you and me, and so Denise is like, yeah, like the band member guy is like eyeballing me, so like, doesn't that guy notice that girl is with Terry? Like, does he not give a fuck? Like, does he go on and probably one of those guys that go through all these like problems is like picking a girl out or something? Like, that's just strange. Um, but yeah, like that guy is just so like I effing that girl, and evidently Denise likes it, so she's going on like, yeah, like it looks like that guy just keeps like eyeballing me. So should I go over there and should I talk to him? Terry's like, sure, fine. Like, even though you're my date and you're kind of ruining this for me. Anyways, uh, so Rick is dancing with Deborah as now Greg is dancing with some rando. I'm kind of curious, uh, if this girl was to have been somebody that was actually part of the movie or if it was just some extra. Maybe it was actually William's actual girlfriend or friend at that time. Who knows? Uh, but if anything, so uh, so Sandy is now at the drinks. So don't tell me Sandy didn't go with it's. Don't tell me she's just doing the drinks and she's not actually going on to the prom. That sucks. Uh, Terry, you're such an asshole. Terry, you ruined this girl. Now she's not going on. She's not having a dance. Terry should have gone on and taken Sandy and like, hey, you know what? Like for all of the crap that I put you through, you know what? Terry should have gone on and taken Sandy out on the dance floor, at least for one dance, and then told her the truth. That would have been the good thing to do. Either that or right then and there, Terry should have gone on and told Sandy the truth. Hey, I shouldn't go on and be telling you this, but I'll tell you the truth because you deserve it because of how you're really not going on and you're not dancing with anybody. Fuck, really? So, plus also like Sandy apologizes to Terry for how she was basically throwing herself at her and giving her a visit from the planet of the sluts. Which I was like, all right, like whatever movie that is, could I check that out somewhere? Could I give it a rental fee? So Terry mentions to Sandy how they all make mistakes, and Greg is going to make one soon. Well, maybe, and maybe not. So Greg goes on and interjects and it says how great Deborah looks and how dead Rick is. So Reptile makes his way, date in hand, to the catering so he can put all of his reptiles in all these cups. So, which is actually pretty awesome. I really like this scene. Reptile, you're cool. I won't go on and I will judge that you had a prom date and I didn't. But hey, man, like freaking, there's a reason for that because Reptile is freaking cool. Anyways, so uh, now we have Buddy. He's at home. He's not going to any prom. Well, the actor who played Buddy probably made it to a prom and probably got laid way before I did in my life. Anyways, Buddy goes on and finds Kevin storming the house. And so Buddy makes up the excuse about the whole cult again. And at this point, Kevin grabs Buddy and he's like, if you don't tell me where Terry is, we're going to take a trip to the hospital. So Buddy goes on to tell Kevin, okay, so if I'm going to tell you where Terry is, take me with you. But if anything, if we go there, we have to dress a little bit more formal. So Buddy is taking Kevin exactly where Terry is, because this secret has to come out now. So Deborah gets up on stage, and here's where she announces the king and queen. I would have honestly have liked it if Rick became king here, but it really doesn't make enough time to make sense for him to be able to get it. But I think that's what a lot of people would probably be wanting this to happen. So Deborah goes on to mention about how she is to be queen. She's like, wow, like I didn't plan this. It's such a surprise that I got this. All right. So she puts a crown on herself. And then immediately, shortly thereafter that, she announces who the king is. And Greg is like preparing himself because he knows he's going up there. So, which is funny. Because he's like, man, what a confident guy that Greg is. Still, a crappy name for a bully character, but nah, whatever. Like, he still gets to be prom king. So, so Deborah announces that Greg is king. Greg uh, kisses Deborah, I think, on the cheek. So the assumption is that both Greg and Deborah are going to dance because they're prom king and queen. But Deborah is to go on and say, well, yeah, the normal tradition is that a prom king and queen dance together, but she's going to break tradition and just tell everybody to just dance because Deborah wants to go on and dance with Rick instead. So, so Rick and Greg, Rick and Terry are talking about how they make a good couple, and so Rick makes her way back to Deborah, and they dance, and here's of course where Greg gets very upset and punches out Rick. Here's where Terry jumps on top of Greg, and the funniest line uh, that Greg has is when he says, like, man, doesn't anybody know how to fight? He says something like that, or like, what is it? Nobody knows how to fight? So, because everybody keeps jumping from behind him, and he just slugs them off like they're nothing, because this guy's a behemoth of muscle. But yeah, but I like this line. I'm sure I'll correct it because I see it at some point at some point of this dialogue here. So so as Terry jumps onto Greg, Greg figures out a way to shift Terry to where he's like carrying Terry like he's basically have like Terry over his arms like behind him. So cuz Greg is going to throw Terry into the water of this beach. So here's where we see both Kevin, and here's where we see both uh, Bucky or Bucky, Buddy. Buddy is wearing a tuxedo shirt, which I absolutely love because I'd be the same way. And Kevin has yet to change at all, so it's like screw your formal. I'm gonna go to this place regardless. So after Terry gets thrown into the water, we then see Buddy that runs and jumps onto Greg. Here's where Rick gets back up, and so Greg goes on and says, "Shit, where do these guys learn to fight?" That's what he says. So Greg shrugs off Buddy. Believe me, Buddy is I'm sure a very muscular man of 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 whatever I can say to just. But yeah, just Greg just is to be too much muscle for even Buddy to take care of. So, which leaves us back to Rick. Greg goes on after shrugging off both Terry and both Buddy to make his way back to Rick, and they start fighting. This very much can go on and feel very similar to like Never Back Down, where we have the two people needing to fight by the end of the movie. But anyways, so also at this point, Greg has to have his white gloves on. Man, this guy just keeps these white gloves everywhere he goes. That I guess is to be the signature of the character, and I guess that has to make sense. So so as they are duking it out, we would have Rick punch Greg, knocking down this table of catering, and Buddy and now Terry make their way out of the water, And Terry is very confused why Buddy is even here. And then she's met by Kevin. So Kevin is very confused why Terry is here and why Terry is wearing a tuxedo of all things. Terry is telling Kevin to please leave, and and that he'll and that Terry will call Kevin tonight. Rick goes on and meets up with Terry, very confused because he's like, "What the heck is going on here?" So Rick asks who Kevin is, and Kevin's like, "Well, I'm Terry's boyfriend," and Kevin goes on and says, "We can work this out. I know you still love me." And Terry's like, "No, I love someone else." Ooh, who's the reveal of the other individual? So I think it's probably obvious, right? So Buddy makes his way to Sandy, and and Terry goes on and rips away Rick so that way she can tell him in private, confess everything to him. And Buddy tells Sandy, it's like, well, yeah, it's gonna get better. Just wait till you see what's really going on here. So Terry goes on as Rick says, "Hey, big night, right?" Uh, Terry says, "Yeah, I'm sure you're a little confused," and Rick's like, "A little confused." Uh, Terry goes on to start opening up, and Rick is like, "Well, yeah, I know what's up. Like, you're gay." And Terry's like, "No, I'm not gay." And so Rick is like, "Oh yeah, so I am kind of confused." So Terry goes on and says, "I'm a girl, I'm a woman," and and Terry now has to prove that by ripping away her blazer and her dress shirt and revealing her chest, revealing her boobs. And Rick is like, "Are those what I think?" Yeah, those are really hers, Rick. Those are really those are yeah, those are hers. So uh so Terry finally goes on and explains how she was to go through this journalist contest, how she wanted to prove that swapping genders could go on and could benefit her in winning this contest. And she basically explains everything. Terry realizes that Rick is probably upset, and Terry says she thinks that Rick is terrific and that their friendship means so much to her. But uh, if anything, she wants there to be more there. And as Rick starts to make his way back to the dance floor, Terry goes on and meets him, and the two of them lock lips. The two of them kiss. And everybody's like, all like, huh? Because I guess being gay is not something that I guess at this time period was to be something that wasn't as easily accepted. Like, if anything, yeah, just two guys kissing. Two guys just locking lips. Like, come on. Like, anyways, but Rick goes on and has to kind of have everybody a pause, and so he shouts out the word, "She has tits." And then they're like, "Oh, he's a girl?" Oh, okay. So So Terry then goes on to say, it's like, oh, is it 9:15 already? Well, I had a lovely night at the prom. And then, so Kevin goes on and just finds some random blonde and he says hello to her. And it's like, hey, you probably have a date, right? And she's like, yeah, and she walks off. So Terry makes her way to a taxi and then leaves. And Terry makes her way back to Buddy's room and finds that Buddy is not alone, that um he's with Sandy. Good for Sandy, yeah. She gets some loving. And she also gets uh to be with somebody. Unlike Terry, who wasn't interested in Sandy. Anyways, so Terry makes her way to Buddy asking about why he had brought Kevin to the prom, and and how, of course, Buddy goes on to explain that, which of course we've already gone on to see. So Sandy and Buddy are going and experimenting, and so Terry goes on and lets them go on and do so, while she goes on and writes her article. So at this point, because of the damage being so much done, Terry has decided to make her way back to her other school instead of going back to Rick's school and staying there. So as both Terry and Denise start walking, there's two guys that start passing by, the same guys we've continued to see throughout this movie, and they ask Terry if she wants to go out tonight or Saturday night or whatever. And Terry keeps saying about how she is to have just broken up with Kevin, and if anything, like, she's just not ready. So, so, so Denise is telling Terry that at some point that she'll move on. It'll take a while. It'll take a couple years, but if anything, it'll happen. So Terry meets with the kid that was in her journalist class from the earlier part of the movie that was talking to Rainmaker about the whole driver's ed guy who had ran over some dog. So the student goes on and says to Terry about how he liked her article and was curious if she wanted to go out with him. And again, Terry says that she's not ready. So here's where Terry meets up with Rainmaker, her teacher, and so Rainmaker says that Terry had won, and congratulates her, and that the article is really good. But he asks her about Rick, and it kind of felt like a loose end to that story, and so like asking her, it's like, well, you really liked Rick, didn't you? And and Rainmaker is like, well, yeah, like I definitely read your article, and it really felt like you liked that guy, so maybe you should have really looked into that. So now there's some time passing, and so Terry is to leave and be picked up by Buddy somewhere, And Terry's to go on and ask where Buddy was, and he's like, well, hey, I ran out of gas, so I just barely put enough in it. And so, if anything, all of a sudden, as the two of them start talking here and start talking about ice cream, all of a sudden, then Rick appears. And Buddy starts to walk away. Terry says to Rick, it's like, well, hey, I thought you hated me. And Rick says to Terry that he missed her. And Rick said, I read your article. Do you really feel the same way about me? And, or do you still feel the same way that you did when you read that article about me? And, and Terry says, well, yeah, I guess I do. So Terry goes on to immediately ask Rick out to have them go out together on Friday night. And Terry's like, well, or Rick is like, well, hey, I'm the guy here. How about I go on and I ask you out? So Rick goes on to say, it's like, well, hey, would you like to go on a Friday night and go on a date? Terry's like, yeah, I like to go and I like to do that. It's like the bit of a joke of like, well, yeah, like he's gonna go on and ask you the exact same thing, which I find funny. So the two of them get in the car and they drive off here. But before that happens, there's a possibility that Buddy is going to go with them. All of a sudden, there's this girl that appears on this motorcycle, and Buddy has to choose between the car with Terry and Rick or the girl on the motorcycle. And guess what? Buddy chooses. He jumps onto the motorcycle and they all drive off and credits roll. Thank goodness, because this review took a very long time to talk about. Holy shit. I think I probably doubled the runtime of this movie, but whatever. Um, if anything, yeah, like I knew I was gonna probably have trouble breaking this all down. But even in the beginning of this review, there's a lot to unpack, anyways. So this is very challenging to try to cover. But if anything, also, I wish that I probably could have gone on and squeaked out another review, but I just don't think there's going to be enough time for me to be awake enough to go on and watch Sinners for 2 hours and do everything that I need to do to get that done. But at least this will go out. So at least there's that. Um, I honestly wish that I could say that the reason why this is going on and to have been a thing that took forever to do is because I procrastinated. But honestly, I try to get this project done as early as I can, but it took all freaking day to do. Um, Oddly enough, because I had some technical difficulties, but also is just like as soon as I could go on and get this movie done and over with, like the whole problem was me going on and and doing the cliff notes stuff afterwards to figure out what all to say during this entire film. And then even that reviewing it just took forever to talk about. So yeah, it's just I'm trying to make the best choices, I think, but also uh, it ends up just kind of being that no one is probably going to really care about these reviews unless it's to be something as impactful as probably like an action movie. I'd love to be wrong. I hope that this review does really well. I hope a lot of people like it. I hope a lot of people watch this one. Not just for my own personal benefit of having a thing do well for the channel, but I also just really liked this movie also. So I hope that it does well, so I can justify doing these kinds of movies because I actually really like them. But I guess I should just go on and say I'm just going to try to get out of here uh, so that way I can get this uploaded because I have to clip 2 videos together. And so that also is going to take a long time. So I'm going to have to edit the clips of this together, which is going to take forever. Then I'll have to go on and upload this, which will not exactly be an easy, quick thing to do. So yeah, there's definitely not going to be a way that I'm going to be able to cover another thing on top of this. I wish I could, but I just don't have the time. I won't be awake enough. Um, there have been times where I've gone on to stay up for like 2 days in a row just to hope to get all the projects that I can get done. Um, but to do that now, like, is just not healthy for me. Um, I could even try to go on and take days where I don't eat anything, to just fast, just that way I can try to figure out a way to diet and lose weight. And even that becomes like a very much challenge for me to try to do. I always just decide to just eat something. I just convince myself to just eat something. Um, Even though I would really wanted to have fasted this day. But anyways, because I'm just trying to figure out how to lose weight and diet in between my workouts, and because I really have to go on. I really need to slim down right now, but it's really tough. So, um, anyways, I'm gonna get out of here so I can upload this. Thank you for watching this. However, you're gonna dissect it. Maybe you click into this for 10 seconds, and then you're out. That's fine. At the end of the day, I hope that this one is to be one that people will will like. I don't think that I did this review very well at all. But maybe some people will probably find this one interesting. I hope. Anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, buddy. Bye, buddy.